Chapter 19, BBLL Inc. I took down the list of banned books by the end of the period. In its place, I hung up a construction paper sign I'd drawn that said, "Go Eagles, number 1." The Eagles were the Shelbourne Elementary mascot. Principal Banaszowski would be happy to see my sign. She liked school spirit. She would not be happy to see what was on the back of it. That's where I taped my old banned books list. If you flipped up the Go Eagles number 1 sign, the list was right there. After all, I still had to have some way to let people know what books I had. I wanted more books for the BBLL, though. I wanted all the books Mrs. Spencer had banned. I wanted a giant tower of books that filled my locker, and I wanted everyone to read them. Rebecca said that to do all that, we needed to incorporate. I hereby call to order the first meeting of the BBLL Board of Trustees, she announced officially, even though it was just me and Danny sitting with her at one end of a table in the cafeteria. She had an extra long pad to take notes on, which she used only because it was called a legal pad. Present are Rebecca Zimmerman, Esquire, Danny Purcell, and Amy Ann Ollinger. I liked how I came last, even though I was the one who started the BBLL. Do we really need to do this? I asked. We do if this corporation wants to grow, Rebecca said. First, we need to elect officers. I nominate myself as Chief Financial Officer and Legal Counsel. Danny and I stared at her. Danny shrugged. Okay. You're supposed to say second if you agree, Rebecca said. Second, Danny and I said. Rebecca huffed. You're not both supposed to say it, just one of you. Then I say, all in favor? Danny and I looked at each other. Me? Danny said. You're supposed to say I, Rebecca said. I like I, Danny said, pointing to where his eyes would have been if hair wasn't covering them. I like AYE, Rebecca said. It means yes. Then why don't we just say yes? I asked. Rebecca looked like she was going to explode, so Danny jumped in. Aye then, aye, he said quickly. Rebecca looked at me. What? I asked. Well, aren't you going to vote? I thought only one of us was supposed to say it. That's when you second something, Rebecca said. When I say all in favor, everyone votes aye or nay. Can we just skip all that? I asked. You're the one in charge of the money. Rebecca sagged and I felt bad. She just wanted to play at being a lawyer, I knew. But if she kept this up, we'd be here for the rest of lunch period and never get anything done. Danny flicked his hair into place. So what do I get to be? You're in charge of alternative acquisitions, Rebecca said. That means getting the books that we can't afford to buy. Sweet, Danny said. I've got some ideas about that. So far, I've only been asking 4th graders and their brothers and sisters. But I know some kids in 3rd grade and in 5th grade. If I put the word out, I'll bet I can dig up a lot more books. Just don't put the word out too much, I said. I'd already told them both about my meeting with Principal Banana. The only reason I was still living and breathing was because she hadn't found out about the banned books locker library. You want people to check out the books, don't you? Danny asked. Of course. Just don't go hanging signs for the BBLL in the hallway. Rebecca finished writing Danny's title down. All right. That leaves Amy Ann. What's she? Danny asked. President and Chief Librarian, Rebecca said. President and Chief Librarian? I like that. Even though we'd been calling the locker library a library, I hadn't thought of myself as a librarian, just the person with the locker. I didn't know anything about being a librarian, except for what I'd seen Mrs. Jones do, and I said so. Well, you're going to have to learn, Rebecca said. And the first thing you're going to have to figure out is how to keep track of how long people have the books. Danny ran his fingers through his hair. Yeah, I've been waiting forever to read that Shel Silverstein book, but TJ still has it. I don't want to have due dates and library fines and all that, I said. Well, you need to consider it, at least due dates, or some of the books are never going to come back again. Rebecca and Danny went on talking about more bake sales and which books he thought he might be able to get. But I was still thinking about a better way of keeping track of who had what book and how long they'd had it. The clipboard with the list in my locker was getting to be lots of pages long, and every time I got a book back in, I had to skim through all the names and holds to find out who wanted the book next. The BBLL was getting too big for its britches, as my grandmother liked to say. I was going to have to figure out a better system, and there was only one person I knew to ask.